Hello, I'm Bob Harris. Welcome to the Duraman's educational video series. In this video, we will show and demonstrate the latest one and only Tarazi sprayable polished concrete system. If you remember in the previous video, we were demonstrating broadcasting the cast-on decorative aggregate, and we used a neutral color and we used pewter. So that's why we have the two variations of color on this panel. One was uncolored or neutral and one contained the color fast color pewter. So if in the event you had an actual project where you were concerned about the little bit of variation, you can go back over to tone it down with Deso dye. You do want to use a solvent-based dye so it locks down in. So this is a medium gray Deso dye, and just the basics. You want to use a acetone resistant sprayer, and always start your spray in the bucket as you see right here. So I'm going to start right here. I'm never going to let off out there to avoid dripping. And you notice I'm just putting a light mist on there. If I have to pump, I'm going to put the tip right back into the sprayer, into the bucket, give it a pump, come out of the bucket. Anytime I let off on the trigger, the tip is going back into the bucket. Okay, to recap, we've sanded the Tarazi surface, we've vacuumed, we just demonstrated putting a light dye wash to kind of make the surface all uniform. It looks beautiful. Now it's time, we're getting down to the last few steps, and now we're going to talk about the sealer application. Now Duraman recommends usually a 3-coat application, and there's a reason why. We're going to start with A03, which is a water-based acrylic sealer, and the reason that we like to apply that as our first application is because it maintains the color. If we were to go straight to, say, a 100% solids epoxy, it would really darken that, and not all the time do clients want that. So for that reason, the A03 is an excellent choice to put down as our base or our prime coat, setting the stage for the next applications. So it maintains the surface, and a couple of things that you got to be concerned about is, despite your lint-free roller, it's always a good idea to delint it. Now I'll see a lot of applicators, what they'll do is they'll tape blue tape around this and then peel it off, and that's almost too aggressive. I've actually seen it pull away from the roller stock. So this is typically what we would do, is take our lint-free roller and just go through and delint it like that. It's a good idea because you don't want that lint to end up on the surface. And just this one roll, I don't know if the camera can see it, but look at the amount of lint we got off that surface. It's a substantial amount, and we don't want all that to end up on our finished surface here. So it is a good idea to spray apply the A03 water-based acrylic and then back roll. That seems to be an Achilles heel in the industry, is people complain about roller marks, things of that nature. So one good technique to do is to spray it. Now obviously this is for demonstration purposes. Normally you would want a second person back rolling, and depending on the size of the job, thousands of square feet, even a third person. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll spray, I'll have a second person rolling, and as this roller cover starts to absorb and become saturated from the A03, having another dry roller is a good way to minimize roller lines. Where you get roller lines is if you have excessive sealer on the surface, and if you roll it out and you see that line as you roll back, there's a good chance that's going to stay there. So by back rolling that, back rolling your first roller with a dry roller, that really reduces. So I'm going to spray half and then just demonstrate. Notice how much I'm putting on. I'm barely fogging it on. It's uniform coverage. Back into the can or the bucket. Take my roller. And even right now, because it was a uniform application and I'm starting with a dry roller cover, there's no way we're going to get any roller lines. I'm looking. So in this instance, I'm not going to use the second roller because this roller is dry. Now, another thing that I'm looking for that we didn't talk about is I'm looking at my roller cover right now and I don't see any color releasing. So in other words, it's staying clean, which is an indication that we've done a thorough job of cleaning the surface previously. And that was just a very light damp mop. No need to scrub it. We don't want to introduce a lot of water to the surface. So barely damp mop just to get any dust off the surface. And that's where we're at. All right, so I'm going to look at this angle here. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to continue with this last half over here. Now, one observation that I see right here, as my roller cover is starting to become saturated, this is where I would consider either having a second person back rolling behind me or switching to the dry roller cover. And immediately, roller lines go away. One important consideration is if you're doing a large job, you must work in unison as a team with the person that's spraying. I don't want to get 20 feet out and try to catch up because you have to break that surface tension of that sealer pretty quickly. So, you know, if the person that is spraying gets more than 5-10 feet out, have them stop so you can keep up so you get a chance. You don't want to have the sealer hit the surface where it's not atomized, in other words, it's spotted or speckled, and it'll start to dry that way. So you have to work as a team, which means the person that's pump spraying the sealer down might have to stop and allow you to catch up while rolling. All right, we're going to let that first application of the A03 dry and move on to the next second application, which we'll talk about in a moment. All right, to recap, we previously applied our A03, which is a water-based acrylic, and if you recall, what we did is we sprayed it down and then back rolled it, and it looks really nice. It's been dry now 2 hours, and now it's time to apply our second application of a sealer, and that is the E32, which is a water-based epoxy. It's a 2-to-1 ratio, so what we've done is we've previously weighed out 2 parts A to 1 part B. And it's not a bad idea to have a clean, dry bucket and mix the two components in here. What happens is if you try to mix, number one, there's not enough volume here, but I have seen trying to mix into it, some of either the A or the B side remains on the side of the bucket, and then that's not mixed. And the first thing that dumps onto the floor is unmixed material, so you got to be very careful about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mix the A and the B side in a nice clean dry bucket. And then we want to let it induce, sit there for 30 minutes. We want to let it sit there for 30 minutes. That's called an induction period. And then after that time frame has elapsed, we'll come back. We will apply it with a lint-free roller that's also been delinted properly, and we'll mix for 3 minutes using a Jiffy mixer. Now, it's not a bad idea to make sure on the B side you get all of that out of there, because a lot of residual material can just remain on the side of the bucket. See how much material is on that stir stick? All right. Okay, that's approximately 3 minutes of mixing. Something that I've always done throughout my career, it just seems to be good practice, is take a clean stir stick, and I like to still go around the whole sides and the perimeter and just give it an additional stir to make sure you're getting all on the bottom, and make sure everything is evenly and consistently mixed up and looks great. So from here, we're going to let it sit for approximately 30 minutes to induce, and then we'll come back and we'll roll down our E32. 30 minutes has elapsed since we mixed our E32 water-based epoxy. I do like to give it another quick stir just to make sure it's thoroughly mixed. And like we've talked about on several of the previous videos, you can see I have my slip-on booties to keep the floor clean. Now, this is a good example on this product. You'll see where we like to double roll to avoid roller marks. So we're going to go ahead and demonstrate rolling half of the sample panel, and then I'll immediately come back and back roll with a dry roller. You have to make sure that your roller cover is saturated enough to get the material down there uniformly. The goal is to get it down onto the surface relatively quick. And I'll do a little bit more, and then I'll come back and back roll. Now my roller cover is fully saturated out. It's rolling down much more uniform. Here is where it's not a bad idea to have a second worker to come back and give it one of these right here. And you can see how it literally almost melts any roller lines, and it gets rid of all the roller lines. That's a key right here to producing a surface that's free of roller lines. All right, we're getting down to the last section of our panel here. It's rolling down really nice. Like I said, for jobs any larger than this, it's really a great idea to have a second person helping back rolling. And if you can, not always can you, The term back roll means go perpendicular to the area that I'm rolling. And obviously, not always is that something that you can achieve based on the configuration of the room. But the key is to just go ahead and get the base coat down quick. So I'm not too concerned right now about the roller lines that you see, because that's where the back rolling with the dry roller really comes in to play. Like right here. So a traditional back roll would look something like this. And if this roller cover gets too saturated, just get yourself another roller cover. And I guarantee if you put your E32 down in this fashion, you'll have a surface that's free of any roller lines. All right, we're going to let that dry for approximately 4 hours. We'll come back, make sure it's tack-free, and that was our second sealer application. In the next video, we'll discuss our third and final application. All right, we're getting ready to apply our third and final application of sealer. Let's recap what we've done up until this point. We started off with applying A03, which is a water-based acrylic. We gave that approximately 2 hours dry time. And then we came back and applied E32, which is a water-based epoxy. And now we're getting ready to apply U90, which is a moisture-cured satin urethane. It's 4 parts A to 1 part B. It's mixed in a 1.25 gallon kit. And what we're going to do here is we're going to also use the satin additive. So in the bucket here is the satin additive, and we took roughly 3/4 of a cup to our mixed ratio here. So 4 to 1, we're going to always mix into the A. Now, in past videos, you've seen us talk about the importance of having a separate bucket so we don't get any mixed material on the side of the bucket. The fact that we're using such a small volume here, and also the B side is very liquid, we're going to be okay. So we're going to always want to mix the A and B together first. Once that's been uniformly mixed for 2 to 3 solid minutes, then we're going to go ahead and mix in our satin additive into that previously mixed batch here. So normally we found with the satin additive, the sweet spot is somewhere around 1/2 to 3/4 of this gallon to a mixed kit of A and B. That's usually the proper volume of the satin additive to mix together. You can see it's very fluid, so not getting any of the mix on the side of the bucket, which is what the concern is. All right. Unlike previous videos, a couple of the products like E32, for example, there's an induction period. If you remember, we waited 30 minutes for that to induct. Not necessary here. So we're going to mix for the full 2 to 3 minutes here. I'll slowly blend in our satin additive, make sure that's uniformly mixed. I'm still going to follow up with a quick stir stick to make sure none of the satin additive is accumulated on the side of the bucket. And then we're going to get right on to rolling on our third and final coat of U90. All right, we're right at 3 minutes. Now we're going to add our satin additive into the mix. We want to mix until the point where you see no more, obviously, white, dry powder. Needs to be uniformly mixed throughout. All right, our U90 has been thoroughly mixed. We've added the satin additive into it. Now it's time to roll on to the previously applied E32. Now 4 hours has transpired, so this has obviously had sufficient cure time. There's no tackiness to it. It's clear, no roller marks. So it's time to roll our third and final coat of U90 onto the surface. Once again, my roller cover is not completely saturated yet. Once we get a thorough buildup, it'll roll down much more uniformly. So I'm still just trying to get the roller cover completely saturated here. There we go. Now you can see the difference. All right, we're getting down to the last part of our U90 application of the moisture cured urethane. Looks great. A couple things not to confuse the viewers. We had a secondary roller laying out on the surface like we used for previous coats of the A03 or the E32. Not necessary here. This stuff has got enough body and it's going down nice enough where I can roll out the surface, completely wet it out, and then come back using the same roller cover. I can back roll in this direction and not see any roller lines at all. So it's a very, very durable system. When you go with all of the coats that we've recommended, starting with the prime of the A03, 2 hours later, back that up with the application of the E32, 4 hours later, follow up with our application, as you're watching right now, of the U90.